My name is Marcus Riley, and I never believed in ghosts until I moved into that building. The place wasn't much old, peeling wallpaper, creaky floorboards, and a faint, musty smell that never seemed to leave. The rent was cheap, and I needed a place to stay. Maple Street was quiet, isolated, and that was exactly what I wanted. The building's manager, Mrs. Hall, had a strange smile, but nothing to worry about. She seemed a little too eager to please. At first, everything seemed normal. I unpacked, settled in, and the weeks passed without much to note. But as time wore on, something unsettling started. The air in my apartment felt colder than it should be. At night, I'd hear faint noises, hums, soft and haunting, drifting through the walls. It was a melody I couldn't place, but it sent shivers down my spine. I asked Mrs. Hall about it one morning. "Oh, you must be hearing things," she said with a forced chuckle. "It's just an old building. The pipes, the walls, they make all sorts of noises." But something in her eyes made me uneasy. One night, the humming grew louder, so much so that it felt like it was inside my apartment. I had to investigate. Following the sound down the hallway, I reached the apartment next door, one that had been vacant when I moved in. The door creaked open, and I stepped inside. The room was empty, except for an old chair in the center, rocking back and forth slowly, as if someone had just gotten up. Suddenly, the humming stopped. I froze. "Who's there?" I called out, but there was no answer. I glanced at the dark corners, my breath quickening. There was something wrong here. I slammed the door behind me. But that night, the humming continued, louder, more insistent, now echoing from the walls themselves. I couldn't escape it. The next morning, I asked Mrs. Hall again. "I heard humming last night, ... from the empty apartment," I said. She hesitated, her smile fading slightly. "Oh, that ... Well, the last tenant used to hum at night. A strange woman. But she left a long time ago." I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It didn't add up. And so, that evening, I decided to confront the source. I grabbed a flashlight and headed back to the vacant apartment. The humming greeted me as soon as I opened the door. The air felt thick, suffocating, as I stepped inside. The rocking chair moved by itself, back and forth. And then, I saw her. A woman, pale and thin, with dark, tangled hair that fell over her face. She was humming, swaying slowly, her back to me. My heart pounded in my chest as I called out, "Hello." The woman turned slowly. Her face was gaunt, hollow, with deep, empty eyes that seemed to swallow all the light around her. "You shouldn't have come here," she whispered in a voice like dry leaves brushing against stone. "This is my home. You're not meant to be here." Before I could move, the door slammed shut behind me. My flashlight flickered and went out. I was trapped. The woman's lips curled into a sickening smile, and in a voice that sounded too distant and close at once, she said, "No one ever leaves." I tried to scream, but the words caught in my throat. She was closer now, her cold hand reaching for my throat. The room spun as I felt the life drain from me. The next thing I knew, I woke up on the floor of my apartment. Mrs. Hall stood over me, a look of pity on her face. "She still comes for those who stay too long," Mrs. Hall whispered. "You were lucky to leave, but she's always watching. She never leaves. Not really." I moved out that very day, but I can still hear the hum sometimes, faintly, calling me from the walls. The woman is still there. She'll always be there. My name is Andrew Ford, and I have never been so afraid of a room in my life. When we bought the house, I thought we had found our dream home. It was large, with an old-world charm, tucked away at the edge of the town, surrounded by trees. My wife, Emily, and I were thrilled. We imagined ourselves raising our children there, watching them grow up in this beautiful, quiet place. The house was perfect apart from one thing, the red room. It was a room that wasn't on any of the floor plans. We discovered it one evening while exploring the attic. A door, hidden behind some old furniture and shelves, that we had missed when we first toured the house. The door was old, with dark wood and a small brass handle. The lock was broken, but the door opened easily. Inside, the room was eerily still. There was a heavy, oppressive feeling in the air, as if the room had been sealed off for a long time. The walls were painted a deep, blood-red color, and the floor was covered with an old, dusty carpet. But what made the room unsettling wasn't just the color. It was the strange things that adorned the walls. Framed photographs hung crookedly on the walls, some of them old black and white pictures of people I had never seen before. Their eyes seemed to follow me, staring at me from the darkness. I felt a chill run through me as I noticed the images were all eerily similar people, with hollow eyes, pale faces, and strange smiles. Who are these people? I asked Emily, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. I don't know, she said, her voice tinged with unease. They look wrong. At the far side of the room, there was an old wooden rocking chair. It creaked slightly, as if something or someone had been sitting there for years. The chair was positioned so that it faced the far wall, a dark shadow hovering over it. I should have turned around right then and left, but something about the room drew me in. It felt like it was calling me, pulling me deeper. Emily was already backing out, uneasy, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photographs, those faces, smiling at me, watching me, and the sound, faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable, a soft, rhythmic creaking. The rocking chair. I told Emily about the noises, but she dismissed them as the house settling. We'd only just moved in. It wasn't unusual for old houses to make strange noises. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't. The next evening, I couldn't resist. I went back to the red room. Emily was downstairs, preparing dinner, and Noah and Lily were playing in the yard. The house was quiet, too quiet. I had to see if the rocking chair had moved. When I opened the door, the air inside the room was thick, heavy, suffocating. It felt colder than the rest of the house, despite the warm evening air outside. The photographs on the wall seemed even more distorted than before, their faces now contorted in grotesque, silent screams. I felt a shiver of dread crawl down my spine. And then I heard it, the soft creak. The rocking chair was moving on its own, back and forth, slowly. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it. The chair rocked with slow, deliberate motions. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest. As I neared it, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a figure in the chair, a man, pale and gaunt, with dark eyes and a wide, twisted smile. His face was hidden in shadow, but I could see the outline of his bony hands gripping the chair's armrests. Who are you? I whispered, my voice trembling. The man didn't respond, but I could hear a soft, raspy whisper from the darkness, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Leave this place. Leave, before it's too late. I backed away, my mind spinning. The whispering grew louder, and the room seemed to close in around me. I could feel the temperature drop, my breath coming out in visible puffs. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me. The room seemed to pulse, as if the very walls were alive, suffocating me. The whispers grew more frantic. You should have never come. You should have left. I managed to break free, slamming the door open and stumbling into the hallway. The red room was silent again, but the weight of it lingered. I never went back into that room. We moved out of the house 2 weeks later, unable to shake the feeling of something following us, something waiting for us. I still think about the red room sometimes. And I know one thing for sure. Whatever was in there is still waiting for its next victim. My name is Ethan Bradley, and I wish I had never found that mirror. We had only just moved into the old manor on Millstone Hill. The house was enormous, full of charm and mystery, with its high ceilings and dark wood paneling. My wife, Lily, was ecstatic. The moment we walked through the front door, she declared it was everything we had ever dreamed of. Even our teenage daughter, Sophie, seemed pleased with the space, though she was a bit too quiet for my liking. The house had been vacant for several years, which explained the dust and the smell of must in the air. But there was something about it, something that made it feel alive, not in the way a home should feel, but in a darker, almost sentient way. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. It was the second night when it started. Sophie came to me, her face pale and drawn, her eyes wide with fear. "Dad, there's something in the hallway mirror," she said in a hushed tone. I laughed it off. "It's just an old house, Soph. You're imagining things." But she wasn't. The next morning, I saw it too. I was walking down the hallway when I passed by the old full-length mirror in the corridor. For a split second, I saw someone reflected in it. A tall, thin figure, standing just behind me. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. I stared at the mirror for a moment, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe it was the way the light hit it, or maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. But the feeling of being watched didn't go away. Lily didn't seem to notice anything odd. She was more interested in unpacking and decorating the house. Sophie, on the other hand, refused to go near that hallway. She started sleeping with the door to her room locked, and I found her whispering in the dark, sometimes crying softly. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. One night, I decided to confront it. I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my own reflection. The silence in the house was deafening. I felt an icy chill run through me, and then I saw it. Again, the tall figure, standing just behind me, its face obscured by shadows. It wasn't just a reflection anymore. The figure seemed to move, just slightly, as if it was becoming more aware of my presence. I turned around, heart racing, but again, nothing was there. I thought about removing the mirror, but something stopped me. It felt like if I touched it, I would disturb something much worse. So I did nothing, hoping it would go away. But things only got worse. The next evening, Sophie came to me again. She was shaking, barely able to speak. "Dad, the reflection. It's not me. It's someone else in the mirror." I tried to reassure her, but I could hear the panic in her voice. I went to check on her that night, and when I walked into her room, I saw the reflection of her standing by the mirror. But when I turned around, she was in bed, fast asleep. The reflection was wrong. Sophie's face was twisted, her features stretched out in an unnatural way, as though the person in the mirror was trying to reach out. Her eyes were black, and she was smiling at me. I tried to pull Sophie away, but my hand passed right through her reflection. The figure in the mirror reached toward me, its long fingers stretching impossibly far. I yanked Sophie away from the mirror and slammed the door shut, my breath coming in sharp gasps. But the feeling of dread didn't go away. We couldn't stay there any longer. The next day, I called in a specialist, someone who dealt with haunted houses. When he arrived, he barely stepped inside before his face went pale. "It's here," he muttered, as if he had already sensed the presence in the house. He led me to the mirror and said something that sent chills down my spine. "This is a cursed object. It reflects not only your image, but your soul." I didn't understand. "The mirror holds on to the souls of those who stand before it. It feeds off them. The more you look into it, the more it takes," he explained, his voice shaking. "And once it's claimed enough, it starts taking the reflections of the living. You'll lose yourself. You'll become part of the mirror." I couldn't believe it. The specialist tried to remove the mirror, But as soon as he touched it, the glass shattered, sending a deafening crack through the house. And then, the air grew thick with the sound of whispers, low, guttural voices that I couldn't understand, but I could feel their anger. When the dust settled, the mirror was gone, but I knew it wasn't truly destroyed. The darkness remained. Sophie stopped speaking after that. She wouldn't look into any reflective surface, and she was never quite the same. We moved out of the house shortly after, but I can still feel the mirror's presence in my mind. It calls to me sometimes when I stand near any reflective surface, and sometimes when I glance at my reflection in a window or a dark glass. I can see it just for a moment, the shadow of a tall, thin figure standing behind me, waiting. My name is Claire Harris, and I'll never forget the child we found in the attic. When we moved into the old Victorian house on Elm Street, I had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. It was a big, beautiful house, 3 stories, a large yard, and enough space for our family to grow. My husband, Robert, and I were thrilled to have a place of our own. Our son, Noah, was just old enough to enjoy the big backyard, and I was excited about the possibilities, but I never expected to find what we did in that attic. It started innocently enough. We were unpacking boxes, getting settled in. Robert had been up in the attic for a while, clearing out old furniture left behind by the previous owners. Noah and I were downstairs, putting the finishing touches on his new room. That evening, Robert came downstairs with a strange look on his face. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at the floor, his hands clenched at his sides. "What's wrong?" I asked. Robert hesitated, then spoke. "There's something up there, Claire. I found something in the attic." I frowned, feeling an unease settle in my stomach. "What did you find?" He took a deep breath. "A child's drawing, ... and a doll." The doll, according to Robert, was old. It looked handmade, with glass eyes and threadbare clothes. The drawing was of a little girl, smiling, but her eyes were dark, almost hollow. I thought nothing of it at the time, just some strange remnants from the house's past. But when Robert went back to the attic the next day, the doll was gone. That night, things took a strange turn. Noah started waking up in the middle of the night, crying uncontrollably. He wouldn't tell us what was wrong, but he was terrified. He kept pointing toward the hallway, his eyes wide with fear. "Mommy, the little girl. She's in the attic," he whispered, trembling. I brushed it off. "It's just a bad dream, Noah." But deep down, something was wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing noises, footsteps above us, faint scratching against the walls. I assumed it was just the house settling, but the sounds grew louder, more distinct. I heard whispers, too, faint, almost like a child's voice, calling my name. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I went up to the attic, my heart pounding. The attic was cold and musty, filled with boxes of old things, just like Robert had left it. I felt a strange sense of unease, as if I was being watched. And then, I saw it. The doll was back. It was sitting on the floor in the corner, facing me, its glass eyes staring directly at me. I felt a chill run through me. "Robert," I called, but my voice trembled. I picked up the doll and held it in my hands. It felt heavy, colder than it should have been. As I examined it, I noticed something strange. There was a name sewn into the doll's clothes, Maggie. Suddenly, I heard a soft giggle. It sounded like a child, but it wasn't Noah. I turned, and there, standing in the corner of the attic, was a little girl. She was pale, with dark, hollow eyes, just like the one in the drawing. She smiled at me, but it wasn't a smile that comforted me. It was a twisted, empty smile, like a predator. "Maggie," I whispered. The little girl nodded slowly, her grin widening. I backed away, but the attic door slammed shut behind me. The air grew thick, suffocating. and I couldn't breathe. The whispers returned, louder now, more frantic. "Maggie wants to play," the voice whispered. I screamed for Robert, but there was no answer. The little girl stepped closer, and I felt my heart race. My body froze, unable to move. "Maggie, ... Stop," I cried. The girl reached out with a cold hand and touched my arm. I could feel a chill spread from where she touched me, like ice crawling up my skin. Suddenly, the door to the attic burst open, and Robert was there, pulling me out of the attic and into the hallway. We never went back to the attic, but Noah's behavior changed after that. He became withdrawn, pale, and constantly muttering to himself. He kept talking about Maggie, about the things she would say to him at night. That we eventually had to move out. The house was abandoned again, left empty as it had been when we first found it. But sometimes, when the wind blows through the trees outside our new house, I can hear a faint giggle, and I wonder if Maggie is still waiting in the attic for the next family to come. My name is Sarah Thompson, and I swear our house changed when we moved in. It wasn't obvious at first. It was just a normal house, 2 stories, a big yard, and a quiet cul-de-sac. My husband, Jake, and I were excited to start fresh with our daughter Lily. The house had been empty for a while, which seemed odd given how beautiful it was, but the price was too good to pass up. The real estate agent only mentioned, in passing, that the previous owners had left in a hurry. That should have been a red flag at first. Everything felt perfect. We spent the first week unpacking, painting, and making the place our own. Lily was thrilled to have a big bedroom with a window overlooking the backyard. Then, we found the extra room. Jake discovered it first. He was hanging up a picture in the upstairs hallway when he noticed a door that neither of us remembered seeing before. It was wedged between Lily's room and ours, a plain white door with a brass handle. "Was this always here?" he asked. I frowned. No way. I would have noticed. We had walked this hallway 100 times in the past week. There had never been a door there. Jake turned the knob. The door wasn't locked. It creaked open, revealing a small, windowless room with blank white walls. There was no furniture, no markings, nothing. Just an empty space. Lily refused to go near it. "It smells weird," she said, wrinkling her nose. I didn't smell anything. That night, Lily woke up screaming. I ran to her room and found her hiding under her blanket. Her whole body was shaking. "What happened, baby?" I asked, brushing her hair back. She pointed toward the hallway. "The door opened," she whispered. I turned my head slowly. The extra door was slightly ajar. My stomach twisted. I was sure I had closed it before bed. I got up, walked over, and shut it firmly. Then I locked it, but in the morning, it was open. Again. Jake tried to brush it off. Old house. Maybe the latch is loose. I wasn't convinced. That night, I stayed up late, sitting in the hallway, watching the door. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Just as I was about to give up, I heard a soft shuffle from inside. My breath caught in my throat. I pressed my ear against the door. At first there was only silence. Then, a whisper, low and raspy. It sounded like my own voice. "Sarah, ... let me out." I stumbled backward, my heart pounding. Jake found me shaking in bed when he woke up. I told him everything. He went straight to the hallway and yanked the door open. The room was empty, but the walls weren't white anymore. They were covered in handprints, small, childlike hands, smeared along the walls as if something had been clawing. "To get out." We left the house that night. The next morning, I called the real estate agent and demanded answers. She hesitated before saying the previous owners had a son. He went missing. They never found him. I asked where his bedroom had been. Her answer made my blood run cold. Right between the master bedroom and the daughter's room, where that extra door was. We never went back, but sometimes I still hear it in my dreams. A voice, my voice whispering, Sarah ... let me out. My name is Daniel Carter, and I don't know what happened to the house we moved into, but it changed me. We had just moved into the neighborhood, a quiet suburb, with neat lawns and families that waved at each other as they drove by. It seemed perfect. My wife, Rebecca, and our 2 children, Max and Emma, were thrilled with the new house. It was large, with a high ceiling, wooden floors, and the kind of charm you could never find in new constructions. The price was right, too. The house had been empty for a few months, but I figured that was just a coincidence. The previous owners had left in a hurry, according to the realtor. I didn't think much of it at the time. The first night, everything seemed fine. We unpacked, settled in, and made it feel like home. But it wasn't long before things started to feel ... off. It began with the whispers. I was lying in bed when I first heard it. Soft, almost imperceptible voices coming from the walls. It wasn't just one voice. It sounded like several people, murmuring in unison. The sound was faint, but I could swear I heard words. I pulled the covers over my head, trying to ignore it. It's just the house settling, I told myself. Just an old house making noise. But the whispers didn't stop. The next night, Rebecca heard it too. She sat up, wide-eyed, and looked at me. "Do you hear that?" I listened. The whispers were louder. Now, like they were coming from inside the walls, just beyond our reach. "What is that?" she asked, her voice trembling. I got up, checked the windows, and walked around the house. But I couldn't find anything that could explain the noise. The walls were still, as silent as they always were. Rebecca wasn't convinced. "Something's wrong here, Daniel." I tried to dismiss her worries, telling her it was just our imagination, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As the days went by, things only got worse. Max started having trouble sleeping, his little face pale and drawn. He told us about the shadows he saw moving in the corners of his room, the man who kept watching him from the closet. I tried to reassure him. "It's just your imagination, buddy." But when I went into his room that night, I saw it too. There was a shadow standing by the closet. It didn't move, but it felt alive, like something was watching us. I froze, my heart racing, and the whispers returned louder this time, almost demanding. That night, Rebecca and I couldn't sleep. The whispers grew louder, but now they were joined by other sounds. Scraping, the sound of nails or claws dragging against the walls. It was coming from the space behind the drywall. Rebecca insisted we call someone in. So we hired a contractor to inspect the house. The next morning, he arrived, and we showed him the problem. He listened, his face going pale as he stood in the hallway. "I'll need to take a look in the basement." We didn't have a basement. The contractor's face twisted with confusion when I told him this. "What do you mean, no basement?" I was sure there was none, but when I looked closer at the floor, I saw something strange, a small, faint line in the wooden floorboards, as though there was a trapdoor beneath. He grabbed a crowbar, and with one swift movement, he lifted the trapdoor. What we found underneath was a narrow stairwell leading into darkness. The walls were covered in mildew, and the air was thick with an overwhelming sense of decay. The whispers grew louder, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I stepped into the darkness, my flashlight flickering. The walls seemed to close in around me as I descended. At the bottom, there was an old room, hidden, untouched. On the walls were marks, scratches, and symbols, as though something had tried to claw its way out. The whispers were now frantic, chaotic, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. Suddenly, I heard Max's voice calling from above. "Dad, come back, it's not safe." I turned, but as I reached for the stairs, the trapdoor slammed shut above me, trapping me inside. The whispers became screams. and I could feel something reaching for me from the walls. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. That was the last thing I remember before everything went black. I woke up in a hospital room, my body covered in scratches, my mind foggy. Rebecca never found me in the house. When the police investigated, they couldn't find any evidence of what happened. The house was sealed off, abandoned once again. I don't know how I made it out, but I know one thing for sure. Those whispers were not the only thing in the walls. I've never gone back to that house, and I pray I never have to hear those screams again. My name is Eric Dawson, and I still don't know if what we saw was real or something the house made us see. The house was beautiful tall windows, a wide front porch, and a quiet, tree-lined street. My wife, Claire, and I moved in with our son, Oliver, hoping for a fresh start. But from the very first night, Oliver wouldn't sleep in his room. "There's a man in the window," he whispered. I checked, of course. The street was empty, the backyard silent. His window faced the neighbor's fence, nothing but old wood and darkness beyond. "There's no one there, buddy," I said, ruffling his hair. But I was wrong. A week later, Claire woke up screaming, "Eric, there's someone outside." I ran to the window, and there standing in our backyard was a man, not moving, just staring up at us. His face was pale, eyes sunken, body rigid, like he was barely breathing. I grabbed my phone, but when I looked back, he was gone. The police found nothing. "Probably just a drifter," they said. But Oliver started talking to him at night. I'd hear him whispering. "He's waiting," Oliver would say. "He says he wants to come in." We installed cameras, locked the doors. But then, the scratching started. Soft, deliberate scratches against the glass. One night, I woke up to find Oliver's bed empty. My heart nearly stopped. I found him at the back door, his small fingers hovering over the lock. "He says it's cold outside," Oliver mumbled, eyes glazed. "He says he used to live here." I grabbed him, shaking. "Oliver, who?" "The man in the window." I turned, and there standing just inches from the glass was his face, pale, grinning, waiting. I yanked Oliver away and ran. We left that night, never looking back. The house is still there, and so is he. My name is Olivia Harper, and I never should have ignored the warnings. When we moved into our new home, I was thrilled. A fresh start, a beautiful house, a quiet neighborhood, everything we had hoped for. My husband, Mark, and I had spent years saving up for this. Our son, Noah, was just as excited, running through the hallways, claiming the biggest bedroom as his own. The only thing that unsettled me was the door at the end of the upstairs hallway. There was a single, locked door. The real estate agent had brushed it off. "Just an old storage room," she had said. Nothing to worry about, but something about it felt wrong. That first night, as I lay in bed, I heard something, a faint tapping noise, soft, rhythmic, coming from the direction of the locked room. Mark slept through it. I told myself it was just the house settling. Then, Noah started talking in his sleep. At first it was just mumbles, then full sentences. "She's crying," he whispered one night. "She wants to come out." The next morning, I checked the door. It was still locked, but the air around it felt ... colder. Then the dreams started. I saw a woman standing in the hallway, her face obscured by long, tangled hair. She would reach for the door, her fingers bloodied from scratching. In my dream, I wanted to stop her, but I couldn't move. I could only watch as she whispered, over and over, "Let me out." One night, I woke to the sound of Noah's voice. He wasn't in his bed. He was standing in front of the door. His tiny fingers were pressed against the wood, his ear tilted as if listening. "Noah," I whispered. He turned, eyes glassy. "She's inside," he said. "She says you locked her." In my blood ran cold. I grabbed his hand and pulled him away, my heart hammering. The next morning, I told Mark we needed to leave. He thought I was being ridiculous. "It's just a house. Live," he said. "Noah's just a kid. Don't let it get to you." That night, the door opened on its own. I woke to a creaking noise and saw it wide open, revealing a dark, empty space beyond something moved inside. I ran. I grabbed Noah and didn't stop until we were outside, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Mark followed, half asleep and confused, but I didn't care. We left that night. Never went back. The house is still there. Someone else lives in it now, but sometimes I wonder if they hear the tapping, if they see the door slowly creaking open in the middle of the night, if they know she's still waiting. My name is Jason Holloway, and I know now that some houses don't want to be lived in. When my wife, Laura, and I moved into our new home, we thought it was perfect. A spacious 2-story house, a big backyard for our daughter Mia, and a quiet neighborhood. The place had been on the market for a while, but we assumed we had just gotten lucky. We should have asked why it was empty for so long. The first thing we noticed was the sound. Late at night, when everything was quiet, we'd hear it, a soft gurgling coming from the pipes. At first, we thought it was just old plumbing, but then the noises changed. The gurgling became whispers. Laura heard them first. One night, she woke me, her face pale. "Jason, listen." I strained my ears, and then I heard it, a faint, raspy whisper traveling through the pipes. The words were too distorted to understand, but the tone was clear, desperate, pleading. Mia started complaining about the bathroom. "The water is weird," she said one morning. "It tastes funny." A chill ran through me. That night, I went to check. I turned on the faucet in the upstairs bathroom. At first, just water. Then something dark seeped out, a thick, red liquid. I stumbled back, my stomach twisting, but as quickly as it came, it was gone. The water ran clear. Laura didn't believe me. "It's just rust," she said, but I saw the doubt in her eyes. Then, the drain started whispering Mia's name. I heard it myself, a slow, wet voice slithering through the pipes. "Mia, ... I ripped the sink apart. Nothing, just pipes leading into darkness. The next morning, Mia wouldn't wake up. We rushed her to the hospital. The doctor said she was dehydrated, but that didn't make sense. She'd been drinking plenty of water. Then I thought about the bathroom, about the whispers in the pipes. I went home alone that night. I had to know. I took a flashlight and climbed under the house, crawling through the damp, narrow space. The pipes ran along the ceiling, rusted and old, and then I saw it. A small, hollow opening in the pipes, just big enough for something to breathe through. A hand shot out, fingers grasping. I scrambled back, my heart slamming against my ribs. The whispering grew louder, filling my ears, surrounding me. I don't remember getting out. I just remember running. We moved out the next day. Mia recovered, but she doesn't talk about the house, and I don't turn on the faucet at night anymore, because sometimes I still hear my name whispering through the pipes. My name is Daniel Carter, and if you're reading this, I need you to believe me. I need anyone to believe what happened to my family. When we moved into the house on Blackwood Lane, it started the first night. We had barely finished unpacking, and my wife, Emily, had already collapsed on the couch with exhaustion. Our daughter, Sophie, was upstairs, excited about her new room. I was locking the doors when I heard a sound faint, almost like whispering. I brushed it off as the wind, but then the door to the basement creaked open on its own. I hadn't even realized there was a basement. A strange smell seeped from the darkness below damp earth, something rotten. I switched on the light, but the bulb flickered and died. That's when I heard it, a soft shuffle. Something was down there. I slammed the door shut. That should have been enough to make me leave. But we had spent all our money on this house. I told myself I was imagining things, until Sophie started talking to someone who wasn't there. She called him Mr. Hollow. At first, we thought it was an imaginary friend. She would sit in her room, whispering, nodding as if listening. Then, she stopped sleeping. She would wake up screaming, pointing at the corners of her room, saying, "He's in the walls, Daddy. He's watching." Emily was terrified. I tried to calm her, saying it was just Sophie adjusting to the move. But then Sophie started drawing. Horrible drawings. A tall, faceless figure with hollow eyes, peering from the cracks in the walls. Then, we found the crawl space. One night, I woke up to the sound of something scratching inside the walls. I followed the noise to Sophie's room. She was sitting, up in bed, staring at the closet. "He's coming out," she whispered. The closet door creaked open. I grabbed a flashlight and pushed the clothes aside. That's when I saw an old, wooden panel at the back of the closet, slightly ajar. Behind it, a dark tunnel stretched into the depths of the house. Something breathed. I slammed the panel shut and nailed it in place. But the house wasn't done with us. That night, Emily woke up screaming. She said she had felt cold hands gripping her ankles, pulling her toward the edge of the bed. I turned on the light, but there were no marks, no sign of anything, until I looked under the bed. There were fingerprints in the dust. Long, thin fingerprints leading to the closet. We left the next morning. I never looked back when we drove away. But as we turned the corner, Sophie, silent until then, murmured, "He's still watching." And I knew, deep down, she was right.